we're going to get started. Folks will come in as they come in. We had a lot of interest in this meeting, but some folks said they couldn't make it tonight. That's why we're taping it, and we will post it so that anyone who still has interest can look at it later. All right, so good evening. Good evening. My name is Deirdre Brown, Chair of the Ward 3 Democratic Committee, and I just want to welcome you all to this conversation about how we can support our federal workers here in the District of Columbia. I will be turning this meeting question and answer section over to Erwin Rose. Erwin is the chair of our outreach task force, and so he has been very helpful in coordinating and getting this event together. So Erwin, I'll let you take it over.
Deirdre. You need to unmute. Okay, sorry. Yeah, it was not allowing me to unmute. Sorry about that. So good evening, everyone. Thank you, Deirdre. Appreciate the chance to organize this event with you. So obviously, DC is something of a company town where so many residents are not only depending on public services coming through the federal government, but are actually federal workers or are federal contractors. And in so many ways, DC and Ward 3 are being affected by this attack on federal workers in terms of people at risk of losing their jobs, being temporarily furloughed without pay. And so we felt it was important to provide this public forum to give people an opportunity to hear directly from two key agencies. One is the American Federation of Government Employees, which is one of the unions really leading the fight, where workers are organizing together to directly lead the fight to protect our federal government and the civil service. And so we're very pleased to have Dave Kann, who is the organizing director for the National American Federation of Government Employees. And he will give an opening presentation about what AFGE is doing to protect federal workers during these very difficult times. And then in terms of services that are available to employees who have lost their jobs, or also in terms of receiving support during a furlough, we have speakers from the DC Department of Employment Services, and we're very appreciative that we have Coutura Aldridge, who is the Quality Control Coordinator. Also, Cherie Finley will be presenting. Cherie is the Operations Manager for the Bureau of Workforce and Federal Programs. And from the same agency, we're also joined by Rachel Burrows-Nicolo and Denise Brown, who will support in responding to any questions and answers that come up during the discussion. So without any further delay, we bring to you Dave Kann, Organizing Director for AFGE. And again, before Dave takes questions, we will go to the speakers from the DC Department of Employment Services. And if we stay on schedule, we will have at least 45 minutes for any kind of discussion and Q&A that members of the audience have. Dave?
Great. Thank you, Erwin, and thank you, Deirdre. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening. My name is Dave Kann. I am the Director of Organizing at AFGE. I've been a labor lawyer and union organizer for over 20 years, including some time in Ward 3, where I went to law school. So it is good to be with my neighbors. Thank you again. So I'll tell you a little bit about AFGE and what we do, and then talk a little bit about the fight we've been in, and then talk a little bit about what it looks like now and ways that people can get involved as Ward 3 Democrats. So AFGE represents 820,000 federal employees and DC government workers. So for many folks at the DMV that in parking control, people all over DC government, they're in AFGE. There are lots of other labor unions that represent them as well, all of whom are great. And most federal employees that are in a union are in AFGE. So we represent the TSA. All the TSA employees that are in a union are in AFGE. Pretty much all of the VA, pretty much all of Social Security. Lots of agencies, wall to wall, represent folks. And so when people decide to organize and negotiate contracts, they're usually able to do it on a national level with the agency directly. So it covers everybody that's a part of it. And we've been doing this for about 90 years. And we had been growing pretty quickly. I think 2023 we were the fastest growing union in the country. People having coming out of the previous Trump term realized that there was an attack on the civil service. When they concluded their last term, they wanted to introduce something called Schedule F. Folks may remember, where they were talking about taking the apolitical civil service, where people have due process rights, and making it so that the president and his appointees could get rid of people if they felt like they weren't abiding by their new obligations to have loyalty to a political party or candidate, which would have a pretty destabilizing element. There had been attacks on many agencies at various levels. They tried to scrap people's collective bargaining agreements last time. So folks were gaining a head of steam and getting involved. And as you know, the popularity of labor unions has grown in the country in a way that has not touched our lifetimes. People are realizing, I think the pandemic had a role in this. People are realizing that their labor isn't sufficiently valued. And as much as capital serves some of us sometimes, it is not in our interest. And we need to make sure that we are looking out for ourselves and one another in the workplace. So people are organizing like crazy. And as Trump began to campaign for his 2024 election, he said that he was going to focus like a laser beam on attacking the federal service. He called us a deep state. He called us fraud, waste, and abuse. He announced that he was going to be bringing the asking Elon to take a break from being racist on Twitter and attack federal civil servants, and brought him in. And so we started to mount a defense early on, talking about how the people that take care of this country are fundamentally where bureaucracy and fairness lives, the way we care for each other as a society, something that everybody requires. People require clean water. People require safe food. People require to have their veterans taken care of. We provide civil service support for the Department of Defense. All these areas are areas that fall into the ambit of AFG. So we started to push back. And so, in response for that, there's the statute that governs the federal civil service is called the CSRA. So it started 46 years ago in 1978. And it gives federal servants a comparable right to organize in the same way that the private sector does. It mostly mirrors what's called the National Labor Relations Act, which, for those of you that have worked in the private sector, would have seen for any union efforts. But there's an unusual portion of the CSRA which provides that any president can determine that people who engage primarily in national security for their work can have their right to unionize swept away. And so, I've been with AFG for almost 13 years. We've seen different administrations take a look at certain areas. I think during the Obama administration, they were looking at whether or not the people that do IT for national security are primarily in national security work. An argument could be made, went back and forth, but ultimately it's not an appealable decision. And what's interesting about it is right, wrong, or for a good reason, a bad reason, or no reason, it's not appealable. So in response to AFGE and its members, and this was the case for lots of other labor unions, we work alongside SEIU, National Nurses United, AFSCME. He said 1.3 million federal employees weren't eligible to have a union because what they did was primarily national security. So everybody in the VA, everybody in DHS, everybody at DOD, all the people that work for Department of Education, Department of Environmental Protections, the people that at NIH that do allergy research for adolescents, they're primarily engaged in national security. And so if he had simply made this argument on its own, it would have been very hard to appeal because they're allowed to be wrong. But the administration said over and over again in their OPM guidance and when interviewed about the reason they were doing it was because they were mad at our union in particular and our sibling unions that were pushing back for saying that federal employees deserve rights on the job. And so while you're allowed to do it for a good reason or a bad reason, you're not allowed to do it for an unlawful reason. And they admitted, more or less, they were doing it in retaliation for our engaging in protected First Amendment activity, both as a union and as members. So we've been suing. And we actually sued in the Northern District of California and had luck and got a TRO, a temporary restraining order, where we'd get injunctive relief during the pendency of litigation. That got kicked up to the appellate court. And when they went to the appellate court, the Trump administration said, we absolutely promise we aren't going to take away anybody's contracts. We're not going to refuse to meet with people for grievance meetings. We're going to honor the union and people's decisions until litigation is over. And the appellate court said, well, it's pretty hard to argue that there's going to be irreparable harm, which is half of the standard, if the administration is promising they're not going to do anything. So 5 days after that happens, they say that the VA doesn't have a contract and rip up the contract for 215,000 people, or 315,000, sorry. And things like that have been happening since. They've ripped up 13 contracts so far, 14 as of last Thursday. So folks are fighting to be recognized and fighting to have their rights at work honored. On top of that, as you know, they tried to get rid of probationary employees. We fought a lawsuit on that and prevailed. And lots of folks got their jobs back. They tried to shut down a number of agencies. We prevailed on some of those. The Voice of America folks have continued to have a home and be able to fight back against these attacks. I think we've got 17 different lawsuits, and we're working alongside a group called Democracy Forward and a lot of other labor unions. I mentioned AFGE and SEIU. They're some of our main partners in those efforts. One of the things that has been really cool about this is the attack on federal employees as union workers is a real intersection of interests that are being attacked by this administration. So it's worker rights. It's the right to a non-political civil service. It's the ability to have transparency and have fairness. And the attacks on things that have been DEI, which is a great thing, but things that have been lumped into DEI in a way that I think blurs lines and makes it so that the Christopher Rufos of the world can use shorthand for folks that have a disinterest and use it as a placeholder for thought. So much of what makes equity in government and opportunity possible and ways that the government serves its people are being swept away as a part of the attack on the federal service and the attack of labor unions in a way that is amongst the most insidious and awful of the work that's being done by this administration and their attacks. We're pushing back against. What's exciting about it and what makes a labor union cool, I think, in addition to so many other great types of work that get done in the progressive space, the thing I'm most excited to talk about is some of our greatest victories against this attack have happened when they've stripped away our statutory rights to a labor union. So if you go back 100 years ago, no American workers had the right to a labor union under law, but they demanded it. They fought hard. The mine workers didn't engage in mine work. Factory workers didn't engage in factory work. Farm workers didn't engage in farm work. Mill workers didn't engage in mill work. The whole country shut down because worker power was so enormous and so disruptive that they said they needed to channel worker strengths into a legal framework. And they built American labor law based on that. So saying instead of going on strike, instead of shutting down the railroads and the factories, you have a contract that you negotiate that gets overseen by the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service, which they've basically shut down. And you can go to court and have grievances and arbitrations. And they've made the mistake of imagining that the legal framework that exists for working people is what working people's power is constituted of, which is erroneous. Now, we're not allowed to go on strike. People may remember in 1981, the air traffic controllers went on strike and they all got fired and their union got disbanded. So that's not what we're doing. But we can mobilize in ways that are really extraordinary. So there was something called the Heirs Commission where they were going to shut down over 200 different VA facilities. We mobilized locally and talked to people and said, how will it affect you to not have veterans care in your community? How will it affect you to try to have your private hospitals absorb this work? Can they do that? Do you have enough nurses? Do you have enough doctors? Do you have the infrastructure? And what happened was in red districts and blue districts across the country, it became so controversial that they took away the funding for this initiative. They were going to shut down over 70 different Social Security field offices, community by community. Workers reached out to their partners on meetings just like this with community activists and talked to them and said, is this something that your community can bear? Think about how losing a Social Security field office would impact you. And they backed away from that. They were going to terminate 83,000 VA employees. They backed away from that. They were going to cut pensions for federal employees. But it would be between a 9 and 14% pay cut, what they're going to have people contribute. We beat that by having people mobilize. So one of the things that's so exciting about being a labor union is not only do we lobby, and not only do we litigate, and not only do we have amazing partners in that work. There's a group called the Federal Unionist Network, where if lawyers are looking to get involved, that's a great way to do it. There's the National Lawyers Guild. If you're looking to get involved, that's a great way to do it. But we mobilize and show up everywhere constantly. And so if you're interested in participating in this, there are opportunities to get involved in direct action constantly in ways that are really meaningful. We also have a group called the Fed Fund, which helps finance the 17 and growing lawsuits that we're involved in. We're collecting dues deduction from roughly half of the people we were at the beginning of the year before they made it illegal for us to collect dues at work. But we're fighting back and we're winning a lot. And one of the things that's really thrilling about this is being in DC, where people live under the shadow of this effort to snuff out our rights, is seeing people show up and seeing people fight back. And the wins we have are energizing and I think get people plugged in new ways. So that's a little bit of what we're doing. And again, it is a joy to be with you guys. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have when the time for questions come. I know it's not here now.
Thank you so much, Dave. That was great. We really appreciate your joining us and giving us that incredible insider's perspective on the front lines of the struggle nationally, which you're very much at and leading. We really appreciate hearing that, including the elements of hope and the progress that you're making, or at least the successful points of resistance where you're winning some battles. So as Dave mentioned, and as I said, we'll wait for the speakers from the DC Department of Employment Services to give their opening presentation, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. And for the Q&A, we are going to ask that folks submit questions through the chat function, through the Zoom chat function. So we're not going to just be asking people to raise hands. We're going to be looking for questions that have been submitted in the meeting chat. So now moving over to the DC Department of Employment Services to talk about, and Dave, you will be able to stay with us, right? Okay, we said we're going to have a hard stop at 8 o'clock is the plan, but we appreciate it if you can stick it out till 8 if there's enough discussion to take us till that time. Thank you. Thank you. So now from the DC Department of Employment Services on services that DC government is providing. First, Keturah Aldridge is going to speak. Again, she's the quality control coordinator for the agency. Keturah? And I think, Keturah, you have slides that you want to share. Is that right?
Correct. I just shared them.
All right, let's see if we can make that work. Deirdre, you're in control of the tech, right? Okay. I don't see the slides yet. You're muted, Deirdre.
She's sharing. You give her 1 second. She has shared
Sure.
footage. Yep, just give her a second to get the slides up.
Okay.
You got them coming, Mr. Aldridge?
Yes.
Here you go. Okay. Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
And then, oh,
Okay, take it away, Keturah. And then, Keturah, we are asking to try to coordinate with Cherie so that we limit the DOES presentation to about 15, maximum 20 minutes, so we have time for Q&A.
understood. No problem.
Okay.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Keturah Aldrich. I am the Quality Control Coordinator with the Office of Unemployment Compensation. Today, I have with me my colleagues, Denise Brown, who is the American Job Center and the Federal Claims Supervisor, as well as Rachel Burrows-Nicolo, who is our Chief of Benefits, and we will be discussing your unemployment needs. So unemployment insurance overview. Unemployment insurance benefits are temporary weekly payments to workers who are unemployed through no fault of their own, who are able, available, and actively seeking work. UI claims are filed in the state in which you are employed. If you have received income from more than one state, you may have the option to select the state in which you file. However, you may not have concurrent UI claims. Benefits in the District of Columbia The district's weekly benefit amount ranges from a minimum of $50 per week to a maximum of $444. Your weekly benefit amount is based on the wages you receive while working within a 12-month period called the base period. The base period is determined by the date you file your claim. You can collect regular UI benefits for a maximum of 26 weeks. Unemployment insurance fraud. If you knowingly collect benefits by intentionally providing false or inaccurate information when filing your unemployment claim, it is considered fraud. UI fraud is punishable by law, and violators may face serious consequences, including fines and penalties. We can help you address the issue if you believe you may have received UI benefits in error. Examples of UI fraud may include an individual returns to work full-time and continues to collect unemployment benefits, or an individual works a part-time job but does not report their earnings to the state, resulting in the collection of more benefits than allowed. An individual performs temporary work while collecting UI benefits but does not report the earnings when filing their weekly claim. Or an individual withholds information or provides false information to the state UI agency. If you know someone who is fraudulently collecting UI benefits, filing for UI benefits improperly, or if you are a victim of identity theft and believe someone is collecting UI benefits using your information, please call 1-877-FRAUD-60 so that we may help address your issue. How long does it take to file an unemployment claim? It can take anywhere between 30 to 45 minutes to file your unemployment claim online. It may take up to 21 days to process your claim. Delays in providing supporting documentation may result in additional processing time. Each application is reviewed and adjudicated based on its own individual merit. How do I file my unemployment claim? District employees must file for unemployment compensation online at dcnetworks.org. To begin the process of filing for unemployment benefits, you will need to have the following information readily available: your Social Security number, your most recent employer's name, address, phone number, and dates of employment, identification documents for ID.me, your alien registration number if you are not a U.S. citizen, your preferred method of payment, whether direct deposit or the bank card, your DD Form 214 if you are a former member of the military, your Standard Form 8 or your Standard Form 50 if you are a former federal employee, severance pay information, and pension pay information if applicable. How to apply for UI benefits online. The first step is to create an ID.me account. The District of Columbia Unemployment Office has partnered with ID.me to provide a secure identity verification process that ensures only you can access your unemployment benefits. To create an ID.me account, please have the following information available: an email address, your Social Security number, a state issue photo identification, and that could be a driver's license, a passport, or a state ID, a cell phone with a camera, or a laptop or computer. Once you have created your ID.me account, you will need to go to www.dcnetworks.org, click Sign In or Register, scroll to option 3 to create a new user account. Click Individual Registration, and then enter the requested information for filing. Filing an unemployment compensation for federal employees claim. A UCFE claim should be filed in the state where the federal employee's last official duty station was located, with limited exceptions. If the individual had employment after separation from the federal employer, the UCFE claim is filed in the state of last employment. If the last duty station was outside of the United States, the UCFE claim is filed in the state where the individual resides. A UCFE claim may not be filed by an individual living outside of the United States. Additional information for federal employees can be found at does.dc.gov/page/resources-impacted-federal-workers. When filing your unemployment claim, you will be asked to provide the reason why you are no longer employed. There are three main categories for unemployment. Please carefully review and select the appropriate reason. The first reason is laid off, which is separation due to no fault of your own. The second, voluntary quit, and that is when you resign from your employment for any reason. If you choose to resign in lieu of being laid off, please select the quit option. Selecting this option will result in an issue being added to your claim regarding the reason for quitting. If you opted to participate in the federal government deferred resignation program, also known as a fork in the road, process between January 28th and February 6th of 2025, you will be required to upload a copy of the letter you received in your response. And the third reason for separation is discharge, and this is when you are terminated for cause. Retroactive pay and overpayments. Employees who received unemployment benefits and later received a retroactive payment from their employer for the same period will be required to repay the unemployment benefits received. Claimants should wait to receive their notice of determination of overpayment before making a repayment. Payment arrangements will be sent to claimants 15 days after the overpayment has been established. Individuals who do not receive retroactive pay will not be required to repay unemployment benefits. For questions regarding the repayment of unemployment benefits, please contact the Benefit Payment Control at 202-698-5111 to speak with a representative, or check for updates in your claimant portal at www.dcnetworks.org. How to repay an overpayment. When repaying an overpayment, you may mail a check or money order to the Office of Unemployment Compensation, Benefit Payment Control, which is located at 4058 Minnesota Avenue Northeast, Suite 4305. You can also report in person with a check or money order at the American Job Center headquarters, which is also located at 4058 Minnesota Avenue Northeast. Or you can log into your claimant portal, which is at www.dcnetworks.org, navigate to the Overpayment tab, and make a payment using your banking information. ACH payment, which will be the routing number and bank account number. If you have any additional questions or if you need any assistance, you can contact us at your nearest American Job Center. We currently have 3 locations. Our headquarters is located at 4058 Minnesota Avenue. We have a location which is at 899 North Capitol Street Northeast and 2201 Shannon Place Southeast. You may also reach us at 202-724-7000 or at any of our social media handles, which is located on the screen. Okay, and that is the end of the presentation. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Katura. We're also going to have Cherie speak now?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. In addition to all of the wonderful services that are available in the American Job Centers, both virtually as well as in person, on October 1st, Mayor Muriel Bowser launched the Talent Capital site, which is the first of its kind initiative housed in DC. Talent Capital provides free AI-powered job matching training and reskilling, along with personalized support from partners across DC, Maryland, and Virginia. The initiative connects federally impacted workers with employers seeking talent and supports both residents and regional economic growth. So what is Talent Capital? Talent Capital is a job matching and career services platform designed to help you connect with relevant employment opportunities in the DMV. That's DC, Maryland, and Virginia, and beyond. It leverages skills, interests, background, and preferences rather than only past job titles to create a comprehensive picture of the candidate's professional potential. How the process works. There is a personalized intake where the job seeker would provide details about their skills, interests, education, and career goals. Even partial information is enough to get started. There's a job matching feature. The platform actually searches for current job openings matched to a job seeker's specific criteria. And the search covers both direct matches for targeted job titles and adjacent roles where skills can be transferred or leveraged. Each job recommendation comes with a clear explanation of why it matches your profile. There is a career navigation feature. If you're looking to switch roles or industries or pivot your career, Talent Capital actually helps map an existing skill into entirely new sectors, illustrating your transferable value. You receive tailored suggestions with a narrative on how your current background benefits you in each of the recommended roles. There's also an iterative search and refinement. You can ask for more jobs, adjust your preferences, or change your search direction at any time. Each new search brings in fresh opportunities, suggestions with no repetition of previously shown jobs. How do you get started with Talent Capital? You don't need a resume or a LinkedIn profile to begin. Once matched, you can view detailed postings and apply directly through the link, which is located at skillsnation.org. The value add in the Talent Capital portal is that you are not limited to current industry. You're able to pivot to an adjacent opportunity, which are highlighted based on your full assets and skill set. Every recommendation is backed by a specific rationale tailored to your background. So Talent Capital actually operates as an independent job matching and career navigation platform. And that concludes my presentation.
Tremendous, Cherie. Thank you so much. So we had a very balanced presentation, I think, in terms of how AFGE is leading the fight on so many fronts to, most importantly, prevent the firing that's happening and to, in many cases, restore jobs after people were laid off illegally, as well as other services that AFGE provides. And then for people who are in the position of having lost their job, whether it's temporarily or long term, we had a great overview of the services available from DC through the Department of Employment Services. So thanks again. So we had one question that came in advance. I see one other question in the chat. And then one other question that I would ask is for, but I'll get to it in a minute. Let's go in order in terms of the way the questions came in. So the first question, really, Dave touched upon this, but just to be very clear to the person who asked it, and maybe see if there's anything else Dave wants to add. The question that came in advance was uh, about volunteer opportunities for attorneys who want to support federal workers. So I know that Dave did touch upon this. If any of the representatives from the DC DOES have any suggestions in response to that, that would be welcome as well. Dave?
Yeah, thank you. So one thing I'll suggest that I didn't mention previously is there are likely federal employees that are not connected with AFGE that require representation. We are organizing as many people as possible, but my suspicion is if you were to go to Reddit or other forums where folks are experiencing hardship as a result of being mistreated by the federal government, there are opportunities to take on pro bono work there. The National Lawyers Guild also is a great place to go to look for ways to join the fight. And there's a group that we partner with sometimes called the Federal Unionist Network, which includes people that are members of AFG and other labor unions that are always a part of the fight and could benefit from legal assistance. Those are some suggestions I would make. Thank you, Erwin.
Tremendous. Thank you, Dave. The folks from the DC DOES have any responses to that question? Are there any volunteer opportunities for attorneys to work with you or other agencies that you're aware of that would take support from volunteer attorneys? Could be nonprofits.
So our current programs aren't able to speak to those opportunities.
Okay. Sorry, was there anyone else want to say something? Okay. All right. Well, the good news is that there were more questions than I'm aware of that were submitted in advance. So, Deirdre, do you want to go through some of the other questions that came in advance, and then I'll work from the ones that we have in the chat?
Yes, some of the questions they came in, they're just sending them directly in the chat to me. You can't see them. The one that came in was what can federal workers living in DC do now to prepare for just in case there's job disruption with an additional shutdown or RIF from any of the agencies?
Absolutely. So thank you for that. In preparation, just as Ms. Aldrich stated in the slides, and I know that it's difficult to have the SF-50 documentation and to have the W-2 wage information. If there is a potential shutdown, we would like them to prepare those documents so when the request comes in from our agency, they're able to provide those timely so that we can get those claims processed efficiently. But we are prepared for a potential shutdown if that is the case.
Thank you. Deirdre, why don't you just go through? You have some other questions?
Let's take a few in the chat to make sure people who are here get the questions in. And then also if I already see you guys are putting in your contact, great. People are asking for contact information.
Okay. So Chuck Elkins from the EPA Alumni Association asked Ms. Finley to provide some links. She did provide some links. If any other speakers have any other useful links that you want to put in the chat, in addition to your contact information, that would be very helpful. And we have a question from Alan Yu. This may have been just similar to what Deirdre just asked. How about a potential future federal shutdown? Would feds qualify for DC unemployment? Think we addressed that. Is there anything else that folks from DOES want to say about the status of federal workers who are on furlough? So it's, just to be very clear about the distinction between someone who might be, sort of temporarily unemployed, or, when you're on furlough, you're still technically employed, but you're not getting paid. Can you go into a little bit more detail about the situation of federal workers who are on furlough? Since
Absolutely.
it is possible that we'll be facing another shutdown at the end of January.
Absolutely. So there are some different categories for federally furloughed individuals. There are the individuals who are exempt and then intermittent exempt and then just completely furloughed. So exempt are those individuals who are currently still working but are on furlough, they're just not receiving pay. So they're expected to work but not receive pay, but they are on furlough. You have your intermittent accepted, which are the individuals who may go to work once or twice a week, maybe once every pay period, but they're not receiving compensation but are still furloughed. So the qualification or the eligibility based on the furlough of those categories are all different. But generally speaking, just for furloughed individuals, they would qualify as long as their duty station does say DC. So as explained in the PowerPoint that Ms. Aldridge provided, on the SF50, there is a line 39 that has your duty station. As long as your duty station says Washington, D.C., they can file for unemployment in the district.
And then if someone is furloughed, so they're not receiving pay during that time, but then normally and legally, they're supposed to be paid retroactively when the shutdown's over. Can you comment on that? If someone receives benefits from DC, during the shutdown and then receives their salary retroactively, do they have to return those benefits or they keep the benefits?
Yep. So they have to return those benefits. So they are expected to return, to repay those benefits back to the district because you are being compensated for that same time frame. So you are not eligible to receive unemployment in a period where you are on furlough and receive that retro pay from your agency. So upon the receipt of those retroactive payments, you'll receive an overpayment notice about 15 days after that overpayment is established. And then from the slide, if you go back, there are 3 options for you to repay those benefits, whether that's through the mail, a check or money order. You can come in and provide that, or you can do it in your portal as well.
Thank you. That's very clear and I think very important.
No problem.
So Jason asked Dave for contact info. So Dave provided that for the groups that he mentioned.
Looks like there was a question about what people can do to protect themselves for possible shutdowns and RIFs, if I can jump in on
That's
that.
for you, Dave. Go ahead. Yes.
Yep. Yeah, thank you. So there's a couple different things. One of the most effective things, and I know that is because I'm a hammer, everything looks like a nail, but one of the most effective things in the face of shutdowns and RIFs is to organize. We were organizing a number of people in the Department of the Interior, particularly in the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and the Trump administration announced their plan to make a bunch of illegal shutdowns, or pardon, a bunch of illegal RIFs during the shutdown. My apologies. We sued them and got injunctive relief, but in addition to that, there was a court order that they specifically had to exempt anyone from, because as you know, they've been continuing to hammer on lower courts. Supreme Court's been hammering on lower courts to make sure that they're tailoring the relief that they're able to provide to classes that are involved in the lawsuit. So they said that not only were the RIFs unlawful, but there was a wall built around all of the people that were in the union and are organizing that exempted them from the RIFs that were being proposed. So if you haven't yet, I strongly encourage you to organize. Not only for the reason that you want to be behind the union wall when these attacks come, but also because any change to terms and conditions of employment that your agency wants to make has to be negotiated. One reason that's really, really neat in the federal sector is, so in the private sector, if you negotiate a contract and the boss says they want to do something or change something, you bargain. But if you don't come to an agreement, you come to impasse, you have to go on strike in order to fight that. We're not allowed to go on strike in the federal sector. So stuff winds up going to the impasses panel, which is a long and laborious process where it is simply who has a better case that winds up prevailing. So almost anything that they would want to change in the workplace, you have an opportunity to have an equal voice and be a partner in deciding what you get. In a time when the agencies are trying to run roughshod over folks, that's of particular importance. Another thing I would suggest is look at your SF50 and make sure that it's accurate. They're going to be looking at things like that and performance evaluations when they decide what RIF orders look like. So you want to make sure that all of the information that they're relying on is accurate, so you don't wind up having to appeal an action that's been made inappropriately. But I will also put down, if folks are interested, information that we provide for folks that are interested in organizing. I obviously have a bias for AFGE. I'm of the opinion that there's no such thing as a bad union because unions are workers, and workers joining together to have power is the best thing. But if you're interested in joining with AFGE and starting a union, I'll drop that in the chat as well. Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thank you, Dave. Our next question is for DOES. What retraining, job placement, or career transition resources are available for federal workers looking to pivot up or skill? You covered a lot of that ground, so I'm not asking you to repeat what you provided, and I think you provided links where folks can see the material that you presented. But is there any anything you want to add specifically about workers looking to transition or upskill, as the questioner asks? Is there anything you can add?
Actually, the recommendation would be to go to skillsnation.org. As discussed, and register for Skills Nation, and actually use the AI tool, because it connects you directly to those pivots and gives you recommendations. And I'm actually putting in the chat how to access the virtual services.
Perfect. Thank you, Sheree. Next question from Gary Goodweather. Dave, are there certain lawsuits more effective than others? Is there specific support you need in this regard? It looks like Dave has provided a link. Was that a response to this question, Dave?
Yeah. So I gave a bunch of answers of places that if people that were lawyers might be best served going to check. And while I was looking for a specific website, I saw that Democracy Forward, who is a partner with AFGE and AFSCME and SEIU in all of our lawsuits, is looking for legal volunteers. So if anybody's looking to get involved and do legal work, that is 100% the place that I would say that they should go. It is the best place. It's where we need all the firepower. It is all of the lawsuits are bundled together through Democracy Forward. So that's where I would go.
Tremendous. Thank you. Thank you. Another question from Alan for you, Dave. What is the status of challenging the government's ban on AFGE and other unions from collecting dues from members?
Yep.
So I think that's about direct payment of dues rather than the way people have to pay outside of their paid deductions right now.
Yeah. One of the most significant effects we've had when they've said that people were exempt because of national security reasons and weren't recognizing labor unions is they stopped something called payroll dues deduction. So most people that join the labor union, whether it's a federal labor union or a factory union or a postal workers union, anything like that, they have their union dues remitted from their paycheck by their employer and sent to the union. That stopped happening for essentially all federal employees. We as I've tried to mention before, I don't know if I did a good job explaining this, we've been batted back and forth with our injunctive relief. So they'll say everyone gets their dues remitted, then they won't, then they do. So our expectation, we're moving forward with the case in chief with the district court in California, and we think that's going to be prevailing. But we'll see what winds up happening with appellate courts and Supreme Court. The law ain't worth what it used to be. But one of the things we've done that's been really effective is we stood up a direct youth program called eDues, so that people who are members or want to be members of a local can pay their dues directly to their local online at joinafg.org. And we were able to switch over 130,000 of our members onto eDues in the first 100 days of the Trump administration, speaking plainly, is the reason we're still here. And what's been interesting was the federal government, and I apologize if I'm going on too long, the federal government doesn't usually engage in very vigorous union busting, even in the worst of times. So the sorts of things you might see from an Amazon or a Walmart, you don't usually see in the federal government. You might have bosses be jerks. You might have them bash federal employees in the media. You might even see them try to fire us. But they don't usually engage in very sophisticated union busting. That has changed in recent months in a way that it never has in federal labor history. And so now employers like the VA are sending messages to VA workers on their workplace email saying, we understand you're paying direct dues to your labor union. You should stop doing that and drop your union because we've outlawed them and there's no real representation possible, which is not only dishonest and untrue, but a real tell as to whether or not being in the union is worth it. because we know people that give to the Sierra Club, or pay their gym membership, or the VA does not care where you give your money. They're not worried that you're wasting $20 a pay period. They're worried that you're going to effectively fight their effort to privatize your job. And so they are giving away the entire game and reaching out to people and saying they should drop the union. That said, I mean, it is a critical fight that we're in, and an existential one. So if you know somebody who's a member of AFG who isn't using e-dues yet, encourage them to do so.
Thank you, Dave. We would have a couple more questions, and we'll be able to wrap up and give everybody a little extra free time this evening. So questions that came through for Deirdre, and I just see three or four more in the chat. So if anybody else has a question that you wanted to pose, please post it in the chat now, and otherwise we'll wind things down. So another question for DOES is, how is DOES ensuring that services reach workers who may face additional barriers, such as older workers or those nearing retirement?
Our services are public services and they're available to all workers, regardless of barriers.
Okay. There's one more for DOES, and then I'll come back. Actually, I see two more for DOES. And then I'll come back to Dave, and then we'll wrap it up. DOES, what should workers do if benefits are delayed, and what emergency options exist in the interim?
I'll let our federal supervisor take over this question. Ms. Brown.
Good evening. So, what the workers would need to do to avoid delays is just ensuring that they have all of their paperwork readily available for submission when they file that unemployment claim. We do reach out to them to obtain that information, but if they have it readily available, it does help us with the process.
Okay, thank you. Final question for Dave from AFGE. If current trends continue, what does AFGE believe the federal workforce could look like 1 year from now? And what is at stake if protections are weakened?
That's a great question. All of these have been great questions, but that's a big one. I think there's two ways to look at it. The first way I would parse it. Well, no, I'll start with the bad one. I'll go with the good one afterwards. It could be pretty drastic. I think one of the reasons that federal employees are being attacked is because they want to weaken protections for labor across the country. And they are aware of the fact that they have the most easy levers for federal employees. So weakening workplace rights for feds translates to everybody. There is it is a vulnerability that all of us have. That I would not be shocked if this administration tries to cancel public sector collective bargaining rights at some point. We saw an editorial about that in Washington Post last week. Encourage states to do that the same way they've encouraged states to engage in rigging their maps. I wouldn't be shocked to see them try to invalidate the NLRA, which is something that's happening through a lawsuit with Elon Musk and SpaceX, which would put everybody in the same boat. I also think that one of the reasons federal employees have such a target on their back for this administration is, when done right, with equity and inclusion and fairness as the guiding principle, which it is for federal employees, generally speaking, the bureaucracy that's provided by the federal government means people get treated fairly. It means that everyone has equal access to protections and support of their government. And the programs that they're attacking, like the Civil Rights Department and the Department of Education, medicine and Medicare and support for our most vulnerable citizens, those things are all at risk, as they are for everybody else. And don't be surprised if you see them attack the Postal Service shortly, which just would not only create additional vulnerabilities for all of us, but remember what happened with DeJoy during the first Trump administration. Everything is on the table. And I think the other is that fairness isn't just to the benefit of regular Americans, it's to hold accountable those that are abusing power, which we're also seeing. All these FBI agents that aren't in our union that wound up getting terminated because they participated in a review of the administration's previous bad acts. So what's at stake is everything. That said, they were supposed to release reduction in force plans for dozens of federal agencies over the summer. They said they were going to announce them in June and implement them in August. And federal employees pushed back in every congressional district. That's one good thing about federal employees. We are everywhere. Red states, blue states, red districts, blue districts, purple districts. There are people that provide essential federal services, and there are people that rely on essential federal services everywhere, which is a part of why our union is I think such a good partner for the progressive project. And in that way, we were able to make it so that almost none of those RIFs happened. That doesn't mean fault lies with the groups that wound up being subject to RIFs, and it was just we weren't able to dodge all the bullets, but we did most. And I would say, as people that are interested in the union movement, as people that are, because you're here on a weeknight listening to me talk on a Zoom about how to get involved and how to protect federal employees, as federal employees and as people that aren't federal employees, we can win this fight. We have won this fight recently. So I think the stakes are incredibly high, but as long as we stay engaged, as long as we do our job to organize and bring other people in, we can easily win this. We can win this, not easily. But I'm very optimistic about the future of this country and the federal workforce because people are involved and because people are pissed.
Thank you, Dave. I was going to ask you if you wanted to have any closing remarks. That was a pretty perfect conclusion, I think. So we can leave it at that. But is there anything else you want to add before we wrap it up?
Go Bears.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. And there's a lot of valuable information, not only in these presentations, which have been recorded and will be posted on the Ward 3 Dems YouTube channel, but also a lot of really valuable information in the chat, particularly the links that the speakers have provided. So thank you so much again. Folks from DOES, do you want to make any final statement or concluding remarks?
We do not, but we thank you for inviting us. Appreciate that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Well, I think this was a really valuable discussion. Again, two different perspectives on the role of unions in fighting to protect federal workers, and then great presentations on the resources available from DC government for workers who are unemployed, or important to note, who are temporarily not receiving wages during a furlough, which we may be facing again soon enough. So I think everyone knows how to follow up directly with the speakers. Obviously, we hope that you'll stay involved or get involved with Ward 3 Democrats, and I'm sure you all know how to get in touch with us if you made it into this meeting. So I'll just leave it there, and I just want to say that looking forward to being in touch with all of you in the future. And as Ward 3 Democrats, we do intend to continue a series of events similar to this, not always on this topic, but this was such an important topic, both in terms of protecting the federal government and all the vital services that we expect to receive from the federal government, but also the way it's impacting our community, individuals and families in our district, in our community. So really appreciate everyone's participation in this event. And I'll pass it back to Deirdre, Chair of Ward 3 Democrats, just for the final wrap up.
Just going to say thank you to all our participants and members who joined on tonight. It will be recorded. We'll circulate the video so you can share it with your friends and families who may in the future need this information, unfortunately. And thank you so much and good night.